One of the biggest fears in crypto and Web3 is finding out that all your crypto has been stolen from your wallet. Today's guest wants to address these security issues and stop this nightmare from happening to you or anyone in the Web3 space. Welcome to the Web3 Mission Possible podcast. I'm your host, Felix Cao, and today we have Josh Kenyon, the founder of Praxxas. Welcome to the show, Josh. It's so great to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, Josh. So, your beginnings are quite different than most entrepreneurs. You started off as a U.S. Navy member, but found your way into Web3. Why don't we start off by having you share your journey and how you went from being a member of the U.S. Navy to joining the Web3 movement?
All right. Well, I can honestly say that my journey into Web3 and even entrepreneurship probably started while I was still a kid. My dad, when I was growing up, gave me the job of mowing our lawn, but he said, you know what? I will keep the mower running in good shape. I'll keep the gas filled. And as long as you mow our lawn, you can use the mower to mow anybody else's lawn that you want and try to make some money. And so at 10 years old, I started going out and ended up with about 10 lawns I was mowing.
Wow.
And so that really started my journey into entrepreneurship. And I did that through all of high school. But then I took that took a little break from being an entrepreneur and joined the Navy, where I became a corpsman and went on to become a dive med tech. Which is a medic for the U.S. Navy divers. Towards the end of that, I ended up at a command that does research and development.
Okay.
And that really got to get the creative juices flowing on like what could be done. And it really re-sparked that feeling of entrepreneurship and brought me into that field. I had done 10 years in the Navy. Decided it was time to get out and be with my kids. And then I went to work for a credit union, doing their operations and working in a call center for them. And while I was there, I was like, man, there's so much opportunity for blockchain in this space, because I've been dabbling with it for years while I was in the Navy, and put a proposal into them, was chatting with some guys I go to a Bible study with, and one of them was already in the space working on a metaverse. And he's like, hey, why don't you come work with us? And at that point, I joined a Web3 company, which was working on metaverses and integration of Web3 into that. And so that was really where I started getting truly into the development side, into the DeFi side, and honing my craft across the board on that front. But while I was doing that and working their operations, found that there was a lack of security and a lack of infrastructure, both for identity and in particular with wallet security. And that's where I really found my passion.
And that still exists today, by the way. So
it still exists today. So like, it's not that any of this has changed. I'm just have switched gears and I've moved from that side of the house into the security and infrastructure. And that's why we even founded Praxxas, was to move into that field, because like this is an oversight that we need to get into. So not only does it get to be the entrepreneurship side, we're like, hey, there's something here that needs to be fixed and solved. And we think we can make a little bit of money on the way, but there's really a problem that needs a solution. And so that's the long and short journey of like how I realized I crammed about 20 years of various experiences into a 2-minute monologue, but that's how I ended up where I am.
I love how you got started. It's it started with being young, and then obviously your father was a big part of that, and then just in terms of your military experience, because obviously now Praxxas is really focused on the security side. So I was just curious to know, like how big of a role that did working, being a part of, let's say, the military, and also your time. I believe that you spent 4 years in the R&D department. How that had all that come together to, those previous experiences prepare you for Praxxas and entrepreneurship.
So they have a huge effect on it, because I was not the lead on stuff. I was a support role. Right. And so whether you're working with special operations or anything else, it was always, how do we help the guys that are actually doing the work? And so finding new technologies, putting it into the space so they can actually be used by other people, really laid the groundwork for why why this side of entrepreneurship is where I want to focus on. Like, we don't need to be the flashy side of this. We really want to be the boring side of crypto and support all the other companies and support the end user by protecting their assets or making their identification protections easier, smoother, faster. It's all that procedural stuff that is often overlooked because we don't need to be flashy. We don't
Yeah,
need to be doing
there's
this.
a lot of hype and flashiness that's currently in the industry, and right now, in order for anything to get adopted, it's always to make sure that the security is in place first, or before it could be scalable. And there's everything that you're doing at Praxxas, and we'll dive more into it. Is adding that layer of confidence to the public, so that we can have people join the space and feel absolutely safe in the process as well. So you know what? Why don't we actually jump into what you're currently working on right now at Praxxas, and then you could share your thoughts on how everything you're working on will propel mainstream adoption of Web3 and crypto. So this going on to first of all, the problem is, as you mentioned, with crypto theft and assets getting really drained and malicious infiltration of it is I was reading a stat that just in 2021 there was $3 billion in crypto that was stolen. So there's a huge need in terms of a solution for that particular problem. So when it comes to Praxxas, what makes first of all, what is Praxxas, and what makes Praxxas unique?
So Praxxas is a company that we founded just last year that focuses on security and infrastructure in the Web3 space. Things that really make us unique, and it's not truly unique because there are other companies that are doing this, but we are a fully doxed team. We are a Delaware C Corp, and we're really not trying to bring when we look at this process, we're taking the approach of there are existing things out there that would benefit from having crypto brought to them. And so that's our approach to mass adoption, saying we want to take stuff that already exists and improve it. So we really want to make that infrastructure that makes it seamless for other people. And we really want to focus on the customer as well. So when we look at some of these features, we really want to go, who's going to use this and how can we benefit them? Because one of the downsides of crypto is when you're dealing with self-custody, you end up moving the necessary security components back to yourself as well. And so we want to say, hey, how can we solve that problem so that the customer is able to defend their own assets?
Exactly, yeah, because it's non-custodial, right? So here it's the security really lies with the users, and just equipping them with the knowledge and the tools to do so. It's going to be a huge factor in terms of helping users protect their assets in the Web3 and crypto space. And one other thing I remember from our previous conversation. So first of all, the team is fully doxed, which is super important. So for those who are not familiar with the term, dox, it just means that the opposite of that would be operating in anonymity. So being anonymous, for example. So here, for example, if you go to Praxxas, you'll see, the entire team and their background and so forth. So you'll know exactly, who's involved in the project. And that's something that is so important, and especially today, where you do have teams in the Web3 space that are anonymous. And in order for the space to continue to grow and build confidence within the public, it's very important that people are visible in the public's eyes as well. And something else that I know that your company is also audited by CertTech. So did you want to kind of dive into the importance of what's the importance of being audited by a company such as CertTech?
So in a space where we're going to provide a security product, anytime you do that, you need to have an outside source look in and make sure that your code is not actually malicious. And we've seen this in other cases where people are saying, hey, this is actually a good product, but nobody else gets a chance to look at it. So do you really know? And that's really one of the things that we wanted to do. It lines up with us saying exactly who we are is, nope, this is who we are. We've had other people look at our code, and we are ready to present this to you as a product for you. Because if you're going to provide security products, you have to show that added layer of security so that when people look at your product and go, all right, it's not just these guys saying that they're providing a security, because not everybody knows how to read the code. And so we need, for everyone who doesn't, that they're able to go and say, all right, this is a legit company. They've gone through the hoops that are necessary
Hmm.
to really say we are who we say we are, and we're doing what we're saying we're doing.
Awesome. Yeah, that's absolutely important. So, there's the combination of, first of all, being fully doxed and then also being audited by Certec, also being a Delaware C Corp as well. And just simply going on the podcast like this and being visible,
Mm-hmm.
it certainly, shows a lot of transparency. And that's something that, people are looking for from both the business side, but also the user side looking to enter the Web3 and crypto space as well. So that's a huge vote of confidence, with to have all those variables and factors in place. So why don't we actually now start looking at, you shared a very awesome story about how Killswitch actually got started here. And I remember it started with a colleague of yours. So if you want to
Oh,
kind of dive into that particular,
sure,
situation, and then from there
sure.
on, that's how the genesis of Killswitch is has had developed. So probably you want to talk about what Killswitch is first of all, and then how the evolution of it and how it came about.
Cool. So Killswitch is a wallet protection service. It works in a way that if there is a transaction that is not you, you've pre-authorized your funds from your current wallet into your backup wallet, which you also own. Um, and this came about in a very interesting way. When we first started Praxxas, we were actually working on a KYC product.
Okay.
Um, and with that product, we were starting to pitch it. We had started road mapping it and working on it. And one day, our colleague and our lead developer came to us and said, "Hey, listen, I've just been hit by a crypto theft. It was through no fault of his own. The system he was using ended up saving the private keys and the extension in plain text, and so a bunch of people were hit with it. Were hit with this theft. So it wasn't anything that he did. And he looked at it and said, he lost over six figures. And he came back and
Wow.
was like, I've lost all my runway, but I know how I could have stopped it. And that's how Killswitch was born. So he came in and said, this is what we need to do so that if anybody gets somebody's private keys,
Hmm.
which can happen, it just happens because people, whether through a lack of knowing or through other malicious code or just somebody, somehow your private keys get saved in plain text. Someone has the opportunity to get it, but if they do, how are your assets actually protected? And that's how Killswitch was born, was through our lead developer saying, hey, I know how I could have stopped this thing that just happened to me. And here we are, just about a year later, and ready to launch.
That is exciting. That's so awesome. And as we mentioned, just in 2021 alone, there was $3 billion in stolen crypto. And a lot of that has to deal with wallets being compromised. And a lot of people do not know how to protect their wallets. So simply having something like Killswitch, available is creates that layer of security that's so important, especially in an environment where now the security is really up to the user.
Mhm.
So that's absolutely totally awesome there. And then you also talked about several of the ways that wallets can be compromised, and I think that's something that we should really touch on because some of the listeners here may wonder, how does that really look like? You already mentioned one is the private keys could be saved in plain text, and that's how it impacted your your colleague and your lead developer, for example. What are some other ways that users should really keep an eye out in terms of how their wallets can be compromised?
One of the ways that we've seen recently is interacting with a bad protocol. So you connect your wallet, you
Hmm.
give it the permissions, and well, it wasn't audited, it wasn't set, it wasn't a safe system. And we understand these things happen, especially as we're moving from bear to bull markets. People get excited about what's going on, and people put up intentional scams, and
Hmm.
that's one of the things that gets you on there. Um, Whether or not, yeah, I think those are that's one of the most recent big ones. There are a whole bunch of other ways that people can get access to them. Whether
But
it's just bad security is the most basic one.
yeah, but it's
Um,
usually connecting your wallet to some project, And then from there on, that's where it would make your wallet vulnerable to,
Mhm.
malicious people accessing it in ways that you obviously don't want people to access it. I do agree with that. That you typically see that, especially in the bull market, and
Yeah.
people tend not to do the vetting and due diligence as much as they should, and then get really into the hype, and then want to see the upside of that particular project. So in terms of so let's now talk about how Killswitch, how it actually works, the mechanism in terms of protecting users against these risks and
Mhm.
dangers. I think one of the cool things about this kind of create some context is that when Killswitch identifies that there's an unauthorized transaction, and it's able to move your funds into a backup wallet. So that's the kind of like the general explanation, but if you could kind of go into detail of exactly how it works. For example, how does even Killswitch identify that transactions unauthorized one in the first place? I think that would be very helpful starting point to begin with.
Sure. This is actually an excellent starting point for it. So once a user comes in and goes through the process of setting up their Killswitch account,
Okay.
they take their wallet that they want to have protected. We have a 2FA system that's built right into our app that
Hmm.
makes it so that the individual has to identify that they are them making any changes that's going on, and it is separate. And also, that system is a separate contract from everything else, also protected, so that it's the added layer of security. Um,
Right.
Once you have the 2FA in place, you set up the wallet that you want protected, and then you take another wallet that you also control and you set that up as your backup wallet. For me, I'm using a hot wallet as the wallet I'm protecting,
Okay.
and then I'm using a cold storage wallet as my backup. Our developer is using a multi-sig, and so we have our backup wallets that even have additional layers of security on top of it,
Hmm.
so that when something happens, we know exactly where it's going. We know where that it has additional protections on top of what we were using. And there's two modes of operation for Killswitch. One is a reactive program, and the other is the proactive. And so for reactive, any transaction that happens on your wallet, you'll get a notification on our app saying, "Is this you?" And if it's you, you say yes. It doesn't attempt to front run anything, and it doesn't move the rest of your assets out. It says, "Cool, that was you. We're good to go." If you say no, it will attempt to front run that first transaction. And every other asset that you have in that wallet will be evacuated into your backup wallet. The
Perfect.
re- the proactive setting is a little bit different. And what it does is any transaction will be immediately evacuated, will immediately cause all your funds to be evacuated. And that really helps with the front running side and puts everything in a much more secure situation. But with that, I can open up Killswitch and say, I am going to make 4 transactions in the next 10 minutes. And when
Okay.
either of those parameters are made, it'll close the authorization. So you go in and say, I'm going to make these moves. I'm going to turn it off for a little bit so that I'm able to go in and do what I need to do, and then immediately take it back out. Some of the stuff we're looking at doing in the future is whitelisting certain
Hmm.
devices so that we can add that seamless effect to it. So it's, if you're using your phone or your laptop, all right, as long as those aren't compromised, I will be able to make my transactions without a problem.
Awesome.
It's yeah.
So in terms of your proactive, so you'd pretty much just set up let's say your transactions in advance, and anything that happens outside of that is that when the security layer would get triggered, and then it would
Correct.
identify that, let's say transactions 5 that's not supposed to be there. That's how it
Mhm.
knows that it needs to evacuate all the funds to the backup wallet. So I love that idea. I think that's so critical in terms of because one of my questions was going to be, like what if you could provide some examples of the backup wallet and how you go from hot to cold is absolutely key, because obviously your private keys and everything is when
Mhm.
it's on your cold, it's pretty much you have to access it physically a lot of the times, right? So
Correct.
are you using like Ledger, Trezor, like what is it that you would that you see that it's a very powerful, like let's say cold wallet
Well,
for those who are not familiar with cold wallets, for
all right.
example?
So yeah, I have two cold wallets that I
Hmm.
use, and one is a Ledger, and they are
Yeah.
the most probably most well known cold wallet
Hmm.
that is out there. One that I've really enjoyed working with is Keystone.
Keystone. Okay.
Keystone, and it's actually a pretty cool system. I'll just hold it up here because it sits next to my desk.
Okay,
Um,
perfect.
and it's actually air gapped and uses a QR code to send instructions for making moves. And it is it's probably my favorite cold storage to date. Now I haven't tried them all, so I understand that this is just me as a user saying I like this one. I don't get anything for recommending them. I just like them.
But these are the ones that you
Um,
found to be very, very effective, right?
right,
Mhm.
Keystone is what I'm using now, almost across the board.
So Keystone and Ledger. Yeah, I think those are two very, very popular ones and well known in the crypto and Web3 space. But I love how you have the reactive and proactive, because the reactive a lot of people can identify with. There's a transaction that happens, and then you'll get a notification just to verify that indeed is it you that is actually carrying through with it. And if you say yes, obviously it goes through, and then if you say no, then there's also a defense mechanism that kicks into play where it evacuates and moves all your funds out of that wallet into a backup wallet. And so having something like that is so important. I think it's just useful for users of any level. So anyone who's entering the space, all the way to people who have a tremendous amount of assets in the crypto space. So I could definitely see something like Killswitch it really taking off, and the user adoption of that is really, really strong as well. So one thing I have, so that's like protecting the external threat. Does Is there a way that Killswitch protects against like internal rugging as well? Because usually that happens quite a bit where for those who are unfamiliar with internal rugging, it's pretty much the protocol or the project in Web3, their developing team, they pretty much siphon all the funds into their own personal wallets. Is there a way that Killswitch can identify that type of movement?
At this time, that's not what we've concentrated on
Okay.
for the side of it. We have another product in the background that we're working on that we are not quite ready to announce yet, but we are looking at systems for rugs, and we're loosely calling it a rug report. We'll just see what happens with it as things come out, but we're starting with the external threats. Um,
Those are
we can
very critical. Yeah.
Right. And so
Hmm.
as we look at the external for the more malicious people saying, I'm going to come up and steal from you, as opposed to I'm going to devalue what you have.
Right.
And those are two separate problems, which would need separate mechanisms for them to work. Because we don't have a buy sell built into Kill Switch. We have an evacuation
Hmm.
set up. And so we are looking into options for it because we have also identified this as another major mode of theft.
Security. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we would love to be able to add a added layer of security, and whether it comes as a kill switch feature, because we've discussed it as being a feature, or as a separate product with a
Hmm.
separate team, so that if something happens to one or the other, we're not they're fully insulated from each other. They do just work well in tandem. Um,
Exactly.
so that's kind of how we're leaning and looking at the problem. We're taking one problem at a time. We want to be very good at the problem we're working on, and then go,
Hmm.
all right, what's the next thing in the security space that we would really like to address? And rugging is high on the list because it's happened. It's happened to me. It's happened to other people I know, and it's just you get into something, you're like, all right, this team seems legit, and then they're
And
not.
then exactly. So yeah, I love that how you're just focusing on the external threats and just getting really, really good at that. And then once you have that taken care of, then you'll look at the internal, and then together, whether it's a combined product that's within Killswitch or maybe complementary products, you'll be able to offer the full suite of security around a user's wallet to protect them from both external and internal threats. So when that time comes and you have the internal side, I think well that'll be a perfect opportunity for us to hop on a second episode here, and you could share with the audience that development as well. So, but what you have working right now with Killswitch, that's so valuable in terms of protecting users from unauthorized transactions. And also, I think one of the most important questions here is, how does a user gain access and utilize this technology, such as Killswitch? So let's say that I'm a regular user and I want now to utilize Killswitch, how would that exact process look like?
So you're going to just go to our website, which is thekillswitch.io,
Mm-hmm.
and take your wallet in there. And then we have eight steps for how to bind your wallet in the process, saying, hey, we want to monitor this wallet. We want to purchase X number of months of protection. One of the things we're going to do here is for our first 200 users, we actually are offering a free month. In the process, you come in, you bind your wallet, and say, "Cool, I want to cover this for 2 months, 3 months," and that's something that we really wanted to focus on as well. Is that we didn't want people signing up for a year, 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
especially if they're saying, "I really just want to mess with this cryptocurrency while I have it. So if I sell it off, I no longer need to pay for the protection of it."
Mm-hmm.
And so we didn't want people in years of contracts. Just come in, buy what you need. We're gonna have a subscription based model as well here very soon, where it'll actually pay month by month, so that if you want to say I don't need this anymore, you can just turn your subscription off.
Perfect. Yep. And so right now, in terms of, we had talked in our earlier call, and you mentioned some really cool things that's happening at Praxxas right now, in addition to Killswitch. Some of the things that we had touched on, and that would be great to have you elaborate on, is your subscription model plugin, for example, also your referral program and your reward system. So, those are some of the things, if you could just highlight right now, I think our audience would be really, they'd be really keen on learning more about, kind of like the ecosystem that you're building around, Killswitch and what Praxxas wants to offer to the crypto space.
Excellent. I'll start with the subscription model, because this is
Sure.
something that as we were building, we're like, man, this is something that would be very useful if I could
Mm-hmm.
just go and install a subscription service that for whatever product I was owning. And so we actually made that. And we're in the processes of cleaning that up and getting ready to put that out as well. And so that anybody who wanted to offer any of their services in the Web3 space as a subscription, that they could just use our subscription model and put it on their own system. And it's month by month. You pre-authorizing the charge so that you can come in and pay with your crypto for the service that you're using. And it's a pretty slick system. If I realize that I'm here preaching and promoting my own stuff, but if someone else had made it, I'd be like, all right, that's actually a very useful tool. And so we're getting ready to push that out. On top of that, we've added in a system within our referral system, which allows for someone, this is built right into the subscription model,
Perfect.
where
Before we touch on the referral model, I'm just gonna
okay.
kind of backtrack to the subscription model itself. And I think that's so important, because instead of having companies build their own code for their subscription, they could come to Praxxas and
Mm,
really integrate and hook their API to their project. And that saves them all that time to develop the actual component of the subscription model. And that's like the thing that makes companies scalable. We've seen that in Web2 and the internet, that instead of having to build every separate component, it's now with the whole SaaS model, for example, like Samcart, or even you don't have to build your own checkout, right? So
mhm.
so integrating APIs such as that, or SDKs, if you want to call it, that makes the whole growth process of projects a lot faster. And that's something that we want to see in the Web3 space, is Web3 projects really be able to evolve very, very quickly by having access to these type of tools.
Agreed. And just having that added layer of, we know this company already that's running the subscriptions,
Hmm.
we can say, all right, regardless about the rest of the company, we know that the actual payment spot is set up in a way that is trustworthy, and
Exactly, and
that's a
secure.
big deal.
Oh, absolutely. It's back in the day when PayPal was dealing with a lot of payments, they had to go through that as well. So obviously, over the last 2 decades, they're able to build a reputation to handle transactions securely. So, working with Praxxas and integrating your subscription model API, for example, enables, it has that level of confidence where they'll be offering their users a very secure form of subscription model to integrate into their business model itself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I just want to highlight that for the audience in terms of how that would impact the Web3 space. But I think that what you're working on there is fantastic. So you know what, we'll move on. We'll switch gears for a moment here, and we'll move on to now more of you know, Praxxas itself. You know, one of the important things is, as every company looks to move into the Web3 space and wants to gain attention and growth, you know, what's one thing that would really help skyrocket the growth of Praxxas?
So there's all your typical answers for this,
Hmm.
whether it's additional developers or having additional funding come in. But the reality is, it's more of an awareness and a focus on security in the space, because that's
Agreed.
really what we want. And we're heavy on the infrastructure side of things. And so as the space grows, we want to see more people focus on the boring side of crypto, on the infrastructure. We view it much like voice over IP, where
Right.
that whole system didn't really take off as it was being promoted and promoted and promoted. And then as it became part of the infrastructure, everybody is using it now and doesn't even realize that's what's happening. And so it's as we focus on the infrastructure that I think that's going to be what helps Praxxas the most, is people saying, all right, what can we do to make it better for the end users so they don't even realize that they're operating in the Web3 space.
Yeah, it's pretty much the fundamentals and the foundation that really doesn't get the spotlight, but it's
Correct.
absolutely 100% critical and crucial in terms of how the entire operation runs. So it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like the same idea as people, let's say, that are in the background, for example, making entire production work, and without them, the production, it you know, it doesn't have the legs to
Mm-hmm.
lift off the ground, right? So bringing that type of, let's say, public awareness to security is, as you mentioned, will be such a big part in terms of
Mm-hmm.
you know, growing the awareness of what Praxis offers in terms of protecting users in the Web3 and the crypto space. So I definitely agree with you on that. It is this understanding that, you know, it's, in order for this to grow, right now we have all the hype around, you know, all the different protocols, for example, Web3 projects. But really what we need to focus on is really having that strong fundamentals and a foundation for all those different projects to grow on top of.
Agreed.
Sounds excellent. So let's now actually look at the Web3 space in general here. So when we're just looking at the Web3 space and crypto, for example, what kind of regulations do you think will affect DeFi, crypto, and Web3 in the future? So DeFi is this decentralized finance, for those who are listening here and unfamiliar with that term. And so you had mentioned a couple already that had already been aware of. But what other regulations do you really feel will impact, you know, the entire space moving forward?
I'm a big fan of being able to go through a KYC process. I know that's
Mhm.
just because we talked about having this product, but we want to make it so that people can identify themselves when they need to and remain anonymous when they want to. And we recognize that Web3 is technically just pseudo anonymous, because you can still be found out. It just takes a lot more of digging into it to figure out who's who. But
Correct.
we still want people to be able to interact and not have to go through a KYC unless they need to. And so I would I anticipate some legislation on the right to digital privacy at some point.
Hmm.
And I think that'll actually help with the mass adoption side as well, with people going, all right, these are the rules of the Web3 space.
Some clarity
Um,
on regulations, right?
Clarity
Yeah.
is a huge point. It's not that we want everything to remain unregulated, because some regulation will help. We also don't want to overregulate at the same time. I recognize it's a fine balance, and I also know that I'm not one of the lawmakers having to make the decisions, but it is something that I don't think we should be, as a group, fighting regulation as much as we should be shaping regulation, because it is new technology, it is a new space. And so it'd be better for us to say, look, this is the regulation that we do want. um, I'm all for, I mean, we are already identifying who we are, and I would argue that projects should have a requirement to identify themselves. I would like to see a little
Hmm.
more open books for the companies, again, to avoid those rug pulls. so
Right.
that people aren't just creating scams. And so I recognize that it's a delicate balance. You don't want to overregulate. We want to keep the regulation so that innovation is as high as possible.
Exactly. And yet be able to introduce legislation where it protects users as well. So
Correct.
it is that striking that balance between, and it's really a hybrid of the two. And as you alluded to, rather than fight it, we all have a role in terms of molding it and shaping it as well. And it's going to be right now we're pretty much living through history to see exactly how the new technology of Web3 and how is it going to impact all industries, very similar to how the internet did and how mobile did, and really see like what happens moving to the forward in terms of innovation, and how that intersects with clarity of regulations as well. And right now it's just a matter of pretty much like pushing out a lot of the bad actors that have given, let's say, Web3 or crypto a bad name, and really getting in the right types of people here to really help the space grow. And that's one going to be a huge pivotal point that's going to be driving mass adoption moving forward.
Agreed.
Perfect. That is awesome. And also, so how do you think DeFi, crypto, and Web3 will look like in the future? So a little context to that. What kind of current, and we touched on this a little bit, but what kind of current challenges and problems that needs to be fixed in order for mass adoption to happen? So obviously regulation is a balance between regulation, innovation needs to happen, but also in terms of professionalism, what are your thoughts on that?
Ooh, so this is something that's near and dear to my heart because it's a conversation I have all the time within the Web3 space. And I'm going to say this in a way that also includes myself for things that I have done. So understand that I'm speaking to me in this process and not just lashing out at crypto in general. But we have made, in my opinion, a mistake where we have hundreds of years of business experience and we kind of threw out all of that in the process of saying we're going to do crypto a certain way. And in doing that, I would like to see more experienced people in the space from the business side coming in to help the crypto side really form and move into the future. An example of this is one of my colleagues has recently put a proposal into his day job where they're looking at creating a blockchain group inside of their current business. And
That's really neat.
They are very interested in it. And it wasn't because we were out here screaming, or he was in there screaming Web3, Web3, Web3. He was going, all right, guys, let's look at what you already have as a business model and how Web3 could enhance that or complement it.
Yep.
And that's exactly where we were talking about VoIP earlier. It's the exact same thing. What we'll see is more companies adopting traditional business side because the rules are already written for that. The expectations are already written for that. And when you start adding in that experience, recognizing there are some bad things that come with it too. And so if we can take the good experience from it and really apply it to crypto so that people don't even recognize it. So they're going, oh, this company that's been around for 100 years is now using crypto and Web3 to enhance their existing profiles. It doesn't become scary at that point. It's not the new technology of people running around with scams left and right. It's, oh, big players are starting to get into it, and they're not getting into it in a scammy way. They're doing it in a way that enhances their product for their existing users already. And we're starting to see that now as more and more companies start to hop into the space.
Yep, the established companies, right?
Exactly. And so I think we'll start to see that. It's not that we need to tell people, hey, come to us in crypto. We need to meet them where they're at. And if that means that I put on a suit to go talk to people, as much as I don't want to, I will put on a suit. And if I need to wear a collared shirt, I'll wear a collared shirt. And at the same time, if I'm interviewing with devs, maybe I'm wearing a t-shirt and a hoodie. It just depends. And we need to work better at meeting our audiences and our potential customers where they are at. Right. Rather than forcing our culture onto them. And so it's a fine balancing act, but I would really like to see that more of that hybrid model of what's going on, that the professional side of crypto. Don't get me wrong. I engage in both sides of this. And so, like I said, I am preaching to myself on it, but that's really where I see the most need, the convergence of mass adoption will happen where business already is, rather than recreating everything from
Exactly.
scratch. So,
Because right now, as a lot of people, there's the Web3 kind of community, and they kind of like operate on their own set of rules. And then there's also now, the, let's say, anyone outside of that, and that's where a lot of the business practices have been already established. So we would like to see the ingenuity and the innovation from, let's say, the Web3 combined with, the business knowledge of the Web 2 or Web 1, and then together create, technology and business practices that take the best out of both worlds. So I think that's with the introduction of, larger companies coming in that already have an established reputation and a systematic way of how to conduct business and to create the best user experience. They're now coming in and taking their business model and integrating assets and components of Web3, and then that's how they're able to, as you mentioned, enhance their their products and services and the experience with their brands to their current user base. Because one of the main things with Web3 right now, there is not a main way to distribute products and services. For example, in Web 2, in the mobile space, we had, Apple and Google were the main platforms, and there were, some of the biggest companies in the world. And that's why the distribution of mobile really took off, is because it already had a platform to take off from. Whereas right now, the entire infrastructure pretty much for Web3 is getting built. So we could find some sort of medium where we could create that platform for a lot of these Web3 companies to take off of, and also to be able to meet their users, is going to be something that will really skyrocket the adoption of Web3 and crypto. What are your thoughts on that, Josh?
I think you hit the nail on the head, that it's that convergence point, and that platform for everything to take off on. I'm personally a fan of that probably being mobile phone usage, but we need some additional development in that field to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that they're secure enough as we move forward.
I agree on that. Yeah, it has to be very compatible with mobile because everyone operates on that, and that's probably one of the main reasons that Solana was is still looking to introduce their phones into the market, is so that they would have some sort of distribution platform, especially in the mobile and Web 2 space. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out, and then how other blockchains they jump onto that as well, and also how other companies from, let's say, the Web 2 space, how they view it as well, and start integrating that type of
Mhm.
ideology into their business model. So yes, so that's awesome that you touched on the professionalism, and also when it comes to Web 3, if you could just name one really big opportunity in Web 3, how would you describe that opportunity?
Oh, I think I touched on this already with the professionalism, and I think the
Mm-hmm.
bigger opportunity is to start inviting those existing players to the table, especially the guys who have retired and been through business. I'm like, hey man, can you come on in and mentor us as an existing person in the business space? Help us make the connections to your old colleagues and really hone our business skills, because we're good at the crypto side.
Yeah.
But to really like, it's been very helpful for me to have people in my own circle who are experienced business professionals, to really help with the legal side of things, to help with, this is what the business people mean when they say X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
And so just to translate and teach us and help again bring that convergence together. So that's the biggest thing I see, is bring in the old, not the old, but the experienced
Experience.
people,
Yeah.
so that we're not losing all of that at the same time, and able to gain it with a new lens on the Web3 space.
I think that's a perfect way, that hybrid. And I think that's the biggest opportunity. So for, any Web 3 companies, it's really merging, like all the fresh ideas and new ways of thinking.
Mhm.
And then also, getting the combined wisdom of people who have already done it, and then using that to really skyrocket and feel the growth of, Web 3 companies. And I think that merger is going to be something that's going to be so key in terms of how the success of Web 3 companies in general, and even Web 2, because Web 2 companies, one of the things is, after a time, the innovation begins to really fall off. So just having access to people in Web3 and working together with them is really rejuvenates that creativity spark again. So this is something that's very synergistic that works for people who are currently in Web3, but also people who are in Web2 as well. So I think that's a huge opportunity, and I definitely agree with you on that, Josh. So so before we conclude our conversation today, I'd like to shoot over these lightning questions to you, starting with this one. So for those who want to level up their knowledge about DeFi and Web3, name your go-to source.
All right, my go-to source. I realize
Yeah.
this is going to be unsatisfactory in the answer because I don't truly have a go-to source because we're dealing in a chain agnostic space. With our products, I really look at all the leaders in their individual spaces, recognizing that if you limit yourself to just one or two people to really focus on, you start to shape your view of the space behind them. And so I really like to have an aggregate of sources. And I like some of those sources to be non-DeFi people. So I like to see what's the outside view coming in. And really, if you really just want to get started, it's as simple as just start Googling, start following various people on different social media platforms, and really get a wide view of the space. Because if you want a certain type of Web3 space, there's going to be a very select group of people to follow. Very niche. So if you want to be in NFTs, there's certain people to follow for NFTs. If you want to be with DeFi, if you want to be in meme coins, there are places to go for each of them. And I really think that it's important to get a holistic view of the space and just follow as many people as you can. And
find out what interests you.
Find out what interests you, and then just start shaving off the ones you don't want anymore as you go. But keep a holistic view of the space, recognizing that all three of those things are part of the space, and there's probably another 50 that are out there that really need to be addressed. And so saying, hey, follow just one person, I think is the wrong attitude. And you really need to have an aggregate of sources, both in and out of the space, to really understand what's going on.
Perfect. Especially with so much innovation that's happening and changes in the space too. So it's always a good idea, especially starting off, because a lot of people will be just entering the Web3 and crypto space in the next coming years, is to really see, you know, what area really intrigues and interests you. And just by keeping an open mind and really exploring the entire field will provide that opportunity to choose those particular areas once, you know, once someone becomes more familiar with it. So that is something that is so awesome as well with Web3, because it allows people, first of all, to enter a space where everything is pretty much brand new. So just the curiosity factor out of that is something that will obviously attract a lot of people as well, and you know, there'll be tons of benefits coming out of Web3 as well. And then finally, where can people go to learn more about you, Josh, and Praxxas?
Okay. We have two websites. And so we have Praxxas.com, which has an About Me profile. It has our current products and solutions and kind of the direction that we're taking the company. We also have the Killswitch.io for our website. You can find a link to there right on the Praxxas website as well. And then from a professional side, our LinkedIn profile is something that we use for just being just on the professional side of things, making connections on that side of the house. And it's not where all our announcements are, but again, that's where we try to keep our professional side. So that's our easiest ways to contact us.
Well, Josh, today you've shared so many wonderful insights on Web3, and we're all very excited to see how Praxxas and will propel Web3 into mainstream and be a major catalyst in the mass adoption of Web3 and crypto in the years to come. We look forward to having you join us in another episode in the future. So, Josh, thank you for being an amazing guest on the Web3 Mission Possible podcast.
Thank you. It's really been a pleasure.